Hello and welcome to this special installment of the Everyday Theology Podcast. Everyday Theology has a reading plan, a Bible reading plan that is 3 years, and you can find that on our website, everydaytheology.church. So you can find it on the Broadway Christian Church website, broadwaycc.org, probably a better place to look at this point in history. But we've had some questions about the reading plan that have come up, and that's the point of it. It's an inductive Bible study. It's very slow and methodical, but we're making observations in the text, and we're asking questions and encouraging people to do that. We have a book, so if you go to Broadway and would like one of those books, please check it out. We started in January, but I'd encourage anyone, just jump in right where we're at. I don't know what the date is today, but whatever date it is that you're listening to this, just jump in and join us. You can always read the beginning stuff, and when you're done, you can just start over and read it. But today's question comes from Genesis 32, which was several weeks ago in the plan, but it's when Jacob wrestles with God, which starts in Genesis 32, verse 24. And what exactly, really, just talk briefly about what is happening here. Why is... Yeah, what is going on? Why is Jacob wrestling with God? And what's the purpose of it? What's the outcome? What do you guys think?
Well,
what do you know?
When you look it up, there's all kinds of different opinions on this. Is he wrestling with a man, with an angel, with God, literally?
Is it a Christophany?
Yeah, is it a Christophany?
That's what I want to know.
So, I don't know, but... I mean, it can't be...
Okay, then. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
It can't be God, because, he says, I've seen God face to face in verse 30, and yet my life has been delivered. It can't be literally God, because no one can look in God's face and live, right? So I automatically discount
Jesus
that.
Not God?
Jesus is God. Do you think it's a Christophany?
I do.
Yeah,
you do?
I do
too. Abraham saw God as a man as well.
So did Adam.
Right before he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah.
It says multiple times in different places in Genesis. It's called the person that's seen is called the angel of Yahweh, but it speaks with the authority of God. It's not in the sense of we have the messengers that deliver the news of Christ's conception and birth, or not direct conception, obviously, but Christ is going to be born. Those messengers are different than this angel of Yahweh is described in the authority that he's attributed with in Genesis. So I would agree with Scott that this is a Christophany. It's just not directly relayed that way necessarily. When you look at Scripture, especially the Old Testament, there is revelation that occurs after. I think that's where that comes from, is that we understand now that's what it was, but to them, they may not have seen that right away. Does it make sense?
It does, and I wouldn't totally discount it being a Christophany. I was listening to a rabbi actually speak on this, and he says that...
He said it was Jesus?
He did not say it was Jesus.
There.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he did not say it was Jesus, but he said that it's not out of line for an angel to be assigned the title God as kind of a general term, which obviously, yeah, he's not going to say it's a Christophany. But I'm not convinced it's not an angel either.
I think there's other arguments, and this is not me personally, but there is the argument that there is the plural term is Elohim.
Elohim
is used a couple times, but it doesn't speak necessarily to the plurality so much as it does the complete sovereignty and authority of God. So, you can look at it that way and take that word in that meaning, like you're saying. It very well could mean that. It's one of those things that
if God sent an angel, and instructed the angel to do this, then you have striven with God, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, the word Elohim is kind of interesting because if you look at it, if you study that word in the Old Testament, it seems to be used for pretty much any sort of heavenly being, not just for God the Father.
Yeah. Can I ask the next question then?
Please do.
Okay, so the next question would be,
Rabbit trail.
how was Jacob beating him? I mean, if this is God or even a messenger of God.
It's like when my kids beat me at Mario Kart. I let them.
No, I would agree, but there's nothing in the text to suggest that.
There's not.
I don't know if you guys have ever
My
suffered
personal experience is authoritative.
suffered a dislocation, but I don't care what happens before. I've had my shoulder dislocated. At the point that occurs, you have lost.
Yeah. Obviously,
never
you
happened to
possess
me.
the power.
Nothing that occurred before matters because that is extremely painful. But I think it's more. I think to that point, it speaks to our general interaction with God as man. That we struggle. We're in this struggle with God, and He allows us some grace and mercy, obviously, because He doesn't kill us outright for our sin. But that sin is that struggle between us trying to reach this point of even after we believe, we're trying to grow in our spiritual nature and be sanctified, but we still struggle with that, and it's that ultimate wrestling match of, like Paul said, I do the things I do not want to, but I do what I do not want to. And it's something we all struggle with, and I think that's the application for this particular story.
And he changes his name, too, in that struggling as well.
And you see this. I'm sorry, you're still going.
No, I actually where I was going to go was at the end he changes his name. Well, the change of name in Scripture is indicative of this circumcision of the heart as it's described, and that your purpose is now you're always serving God's purpose, but now your purpose is even more implied in this name change.
Yeah, I think we can look at this, and you see Jacob. His name literally means deceiver, right? And
he wasn't a good guy.
No, he lied to people. He got lied to. He cheated his father-in-law, who also cheated him. He had all these things where he's trying to go through life, and he's trying to do all this himself and deceive his way through life, and he ends up here wrestling with God all night, and God finally is like, "Stop fighting me," and He gives him. Mark basically remember him by. And it's like, quit trying to do things and fight your way against me and quit fighting me. And,
similar
them, really.
Similar to Paul kicking against the goads.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So here's something that I've been asked before and I've answered, and I know what my response is, but God changes His name in this moment. You're now Israel. And in the very next chapter, obviously Scripture back then is not divided this way, but in our very next chapter, it goes right back to Jacob. Why does it do that?
I'm on the edge of my seat. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I think there's this progression, and I'm just going to guess, and you can tell me, teacher.
Oh, I'm not.
Teach me.
Mine is simply an opinion that's just from being in class. It doesn't mean it's right.
You really see this progression from this moment where it's still slower for Jacob, really saying that Yahweh is his God, and he hasn't fully embraced this love for and this faith in the Lord. This is an important step for him, but it's not until I'd have to look it up ahead of time and read, but it's not until later that I think when he meets with Esau that he's like, your God is my God. There's this distinction in the text where he goes from talking about the God of our fathers to like my God.
Yep, I would agree with that, and I'm by no means a teacher. I just having studied.
Well, you're learning things, and you're
learning.
teaching.
That would make me a student, though.
You're literally preaching tonight.
Yeah, you're preaching at our church.
But no, that's exactly the argument. May not be the right word, but that's the argument that I would make. Is that what happens when God's changed our hearts and we're all converted, we're saved. We still sin after. We still have these struggles. I would argue that most of us probably still struggle with a lot of the things that we struggled with coming in. And over time we're changed and sanctified, and those things are pushed to the wayside because we have this focus on God, and I think the same is true of Jacob in this case, and that's why the distinction is made that at this point his name is changed to Israel, but he's still going to have to struggle with these things. Remember, at the point that he wrestles with God the morning before, he's come to the land of his brother Esau. Well, the last time they were together, Esau was less than happy with him. In fact, threatened his life. And now he knows he's got to cross through this area where Esau's tribes are at. And Esau's going to come to meet him. And he's thinking, well, this is it. I'm getting ready to die. He has this moment of wrestling with God, meets with Esau. And what does Esau do when they first meet up?
He embraces him.
He embraces him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think that is even more to the point of Jacob still has this fear. He still has this worry. He's not fully in the faith yet. And yet he's had this struggle with God, and now he's starting to see the fruit of that, and that Esau's not going to kill him because God has other plans for him. And that's the start of this point where he becomes the father of the 12. Or he's already the father at this point, but he's going to be the father of the actual nation, which is going to be named after him.
Yep. Anybody have any final thoughts? We are 1 minute over our time. No, don't be sorry. That's great.
No.
Any other thoughts or questions about the text?
Totally clears it up.
Yeah. So,
are we going to do this again?
Jacob wrestles with God. When?
No, these little extra episodes on the Bible reading.
I'd like
plan.
to, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, send us your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them and just talk through what we're learning and what we see in Scripture, what we think it means, and but yeah, I think there's some different ways you could go with this, Jacob wrestling with God, and think about it, but yeah, I think and you're still left with questions. I think that's okay.
I mean, I could muddy the water a little more because his name is changed here, right? By the man, angel, Jesus.
Somebody did it.
Somebody did it. But then it isn't until chapter 35 that God addresses him with a name change, So, I mean, is that just like you said? Is that the way the writing is? Is it a kind of like Genesis 1-2 where you see like a zoom in? It's seemingly like Genesis 2 seemingly contradicts Genesis 1, but if you look at it as like this is just zooming in on day one, like then that clears it up. Is this something like that?
I don't want to get like super far ahead or anything, but think about Genesis 22 when God tells Abraham, "Now I know you're true in your faith." But he's already made the promise before that Abraham will be the father of nations. That's part of changing his name. Excuse me. But Abraham goes through this up and down cycle of faith up to the point that God says, "Give me Isaac, sacrifice Isaac to me," and he obeys. And that's the moment when Abraham's faith is not necessarily complete because he's always growing, but this is the pinnacle of that show of faith from Abraham. And now it's clear to us, the reader. God already knows, obviously, but it's clear to us, the reader, and that's really what that implies. And I think that's the same here is Jacob still has a little bit of fluctuation, but he's still at the point that he reaches that God starts to call him Israel. It's not implicit, but that would be the pinnacle of his faith.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
That's the way I think about it.
Is that getting far ahead or is that behind? Because that was 10 chapters ago.
Well, yeah, but I got to do it tonight. I'm in 13 tonight and then 22 way down the road. So it could be either way.
Yeah. I'm tracking with you now.
Yeah. Good enough. Hope that was helpful, everybody.
Yeah, I hope it was. I enjoyed it. Yeah. Send us questions. Actually, send Ian questions. Ian, it's spelled Ian at BroadwayCC.org. Send us questions that you have from the reading plan, and we'd love to. We've got a little bit of a backlog, but we'd love to talk through those.
Them.
Yeah, that would be. I hope that would be helpful to you down the road. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.